Hi, Rosa. Let's take a look at your newest set of essays. This one is about pollution. It's a two-question essay. What are the reasons and how can this issue be solved? So let's see what you did. Okay, I see first of all that again you've got 5 paragraphs. I think we talked about this in the previous correction that you really want to stay with 4. We'll talk about it though. Let's see what you actually wrote. I'm just going to put it out there as a first little comment, but let's see what you actually did. There is an alarming concern. All right, let's try this again. There is an alarming concern about, what does it say? The rising of issues caused by pollution. All right, well, we have to reword this, the whole thing. There is an alarming concern regarding the uh see, it's just not natural. Even if I try to reword it to make it grammatically correct, it still just feels kind of strange. Like we would never say this in native English. So, how about we do something a little different? Like there is an alarming concern regarding the uh, increased issues caused by pollution. Maybe. Okay. This worry is more predominant where large concentrations of people live, such as big cities. Going further, comma, the environment, no, one environment, singular, is degrading at a very fast pace in larger areas. All right. So there are a few issues with this paragraph. Remember what the paragraph is supposed to do. Your introductory paragraph has to do a couple of things. The first thing it has to do is it has to rephrase the topic. Okay, that we're talking about pollution primarily in urban areas. All right, that's the first step. Then you have to address the fact that there are reasons for this pollution and there are solutions. Okay, you didn't do this. You just talked about the big cities here, and then I don't really know. The environment is a problem. So this didn't do the job it's supposed to do. There are a lot of ways to do this. I can try really just off the cuff to suggest a couple of things. You could say something like, there is an increased concern regarding the issues caused by rising pollution, primarily in our urban centers. A number of causes have been identified as being responsible for this issue. However, fortunately, there are solutions available. That's it. Okay? Really, literally that simple. Okay? So let's keep going. There are several types of pollution. The most significant one, and commonly known as air contamination. All right, full stop. Its effects can be seen in the increase of respiratory health issues that affect mainly the city residents. Air pollution is caused in cities by industrial activities and obviously fossil fuel vehicles. All right, so this paragraph for me isn't doing what it's supposed to do. I mean, you're just giving me an explanation of pollution, then you're talking about air pollution. All right, yes, you do say that it's caused by industrial activities, but you don't go into any depth at all. So it's this like mini paragraph, but it's not appropriately structured. It doesn't have the elements that it needs to be considered well developed. So I'm really kind of confused. Okay, it's 3 sentences, but really I want you to think about something. I want you to keep in mind that honestly, a body paragraph should be at least like 4 or 5 sentences. Okay, so remember, it needs to have a topic sentence which introduces the idea of the paragraph. In other words, what the central idea is. Then you have to have your ideas. Your ideas kind of go into more depth, why you think what you think, and then each one of those ideas needs to be supported by some sort of evidence, an explanation, a definition, further, maybe an example, so something, okay? So you need to keep that in mind when you're writing these paragraphs. This paragraph for me felt really short, felt like a mini paragraph rather than a paragraph. Let's keep going. Meanwhile, a less known type of pollution is light pollution. However, it does not affect the humans greatly because it's less invasive and it can be avoided through blinds and other methods. Okay. You've got some grammar problems here. Here I would have put a period and then I would have made this a new sentence. And it does not affect humans greatly. Get rid of that. Okay. However, the disruption in wildlife due to this light contamination, it's not called contamination, by the way. You really should just call it like pollution. Is extremely harmful. For example, the bright lights in a park during night, might interfere with the habits of nocturnal fauna such as possums, owls, and bats. If the council managing these areas changes, you need an S here, the type of bulbs used for others that emit less intense light, the disturbance would be greatly reduced whilst safety in the park would still be provided. All right, so here I understand that you've got one problem, this idea of light pollution in cities, and then in that paragraph, you've also got a solution. That's okay. That's one way to do this. It's a little tricky, and you have to be careful, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about why. Not right now, but we'll talk about it. I want to see what you did in the next paragraph. So far, we've got air contamination, we've got light pollution. Let's see what you wrote. An interesting one what? Okay, you're starting a new paragraph. So you have to be clear what you're talking about. So, an interesting form of pollution, okay, or an interesting issue, even, is noise pollution caused by industrial activities and transport, no S, whether it, because it's not, who is they? What is they? There's only a singular here, noise pollution, one thing, whether it is produced by cars, trains, planes, or trucks. The harm, it's just one harm, it's singular, caused by noise is relative, get rid of the in here, is relative to the time of exposure and its intensity. Even though there are regulations and restrictions, here you need an S, regarding noise, they're insufficient and difficult to control by the authorities. The insomnia suffered by residents close to a motorway, flight path, or train lanes has risen quite dramatically in correlation with the growth of the city. Don't start a sentence, please, with and when you're writing an IELTS essay. It's considered really informal. Avoid it. You could have said, also, taking into account that sleep reprieve is considered a form of torture. You don't mean reprieve, you mean something else. So that's the wrong word. See, I think you mean sleep deprivation. No? I believe you do. Is considered a form of torture. Perhaps governments ought to try to enforce the current regulations or even implement new methods for prevention, such as building regulations in areas with potential intense noise. Okay, interesting. We'll talk more about this. I'm excited to do that. All right. Political efforts should continue in order to try, no ing, to reduce, don't talk about contamination, please talk about pollution in general, even though quite often clashes with the development. Wait, what? Political efforts should continue in order to try to reduce pollution in general, even though they quite often clash with development and economic growth. Political efforts, you need that they. Simple measures such as restricting private car transit when public transit is available and reliable should be a given in any major city. Okay. All right. So there's a lot to talk about here in this essay. We already talked about your first paragraph. We talked about your introduction, what needs to change. We talked about this. This for me was not a paragraph. It was like a mini paragraph. You can see that it is the same length as your introduction, which for me is a red flag. It's not a paragraph, okay? It's just a short little description, short little kind of introduction as to the types of pollution. I think that air pollution was a super important thing to analyze and to talk about, especially in urban cities. And you really missed an opportunity to develop it. So it's a shame. There was so much you could have said here. Let's see. So you could have said air contamination, air pollution, not contamination. Its effects can be seen. All right, so what's causing it? All right, remember, what are the causes? Air pollution. Well, it's caused by all of the vehicles traveling in and out of the city, okay? Trucks, cars, commuters, buses, everything. All of this is creating air pollution. And given the fact that a lot of cities have skyscrapers, high rises, and so forth, that polluted air remains trapped in the cities, therefore ruining the environment. There are solutions, however, that can fix this. For example, only electric or hybrid cars should be allowed into the city center, or perhaps there should be, I don't know, like maybe I know in some countries there are like zones, like you know, only cars can go into zone two, or other like trucks maybe only in zone one, or maybe, you know, in some countries I know they do things like odd numbers can travel into the city one day, whereas the next day only even numbers on the license plates can travel. So you could have talked about that. Since that's how you arranged this essay, you decided to do problem and solution in one paragraph. Okay, so then you could have said that these solutions would help by decreasing the amount of toxic fumes in the environment, lowering air pollution overall. So that's what I would have done here in this paragraph. Okay. Um, so this is one paragraph that I most certainly would have developed much, much more. I think it's important to talk about. And then I would have chosen between light pollution and noise pollution. Um, one or the other, not both. Remember, two body paragraphs, not three. So, personally, I don't think I would have written about light pollution. I think I probably would have stuck with noise pollution as you did. Okay. So again, just to reiterate, a much more developed paragraph. To give you a sense of what I mean by much more developed, look at the length of this paragraph. That's what you should have done with this paragraph here. Okay. Now I want to talk about your decision to write the problem and the solution in one paragraph. This is something that some students do, and it can be successful. You have to be careful though. Remember that in task achievement in the band descriptors under band 7, it says covers all parts of the task equally. So you have two questions here: the reasons, the causes for pollution, and then the solutions. If you've got a paragraph where like 2/3 of it is about the problem and only 1/3 of it is about the solution, then you are not covering all parts of the task equally. You are definitely weighing much more heavily on the problems and much less so on the solutions. And this is something a lot of students do, and it's really noticeable when you actually sit and pay attention to like the length of the paragraphs. Okay, um, so it might seem like a smart idea, like, oh, well, I don't really have a lot to say about the solution, so I'll just tack it onto one paragraph. Yeah, but you still have to be careful because examiners know what you're doing and they're going to see, like, you know, there's a lot more about the problems than there is about the solutions. Okay, obviously, another way to do this is to have one paragraph about the problems and one paragraph about the solutions. Again, I'm going to tell you where people have a problem with the solutions. Most IELTS, not most, but a lot of IELTS candidates essentially write their solutions like a really brief sentence or like a list. This is a solution, this is a solution, this is a solution. What they don't remember is that you actually have to develop that. You have to treat it like a paragraph and you have to develop it. You have to support it. So you have to provide the whys and the hows. So if you tell me that regulations regarding noise pollution would be very helpful, the question that immediately arises is, well, why would it be helpful? How would it help the situation? Explain it to me. Give me examples. So this is what you have to do with the problems as well as with the solutions, okay? Now, let's talk about your conclusion. All of a sudden here you started talking about restricting private car. This came out of nowhere. You never talked about restricting private cars anywhere. I mean, you talked about forms of transportation, that's fine, but in terms of noise pollution, you never talked about it anywhere with this air pollution thing. So it seems to me really rather random. Remember that in your conclusion, you're not supposed to introduce any new information. It's supposed to just wrap things up. So political efforts should continue in order to to reduce pollution in general, even though this often clashes with development and economic growth. In the future, it is predicted that more attention will be paid to curbing pollution as problems such as climate change increase. Done. That's it. Okay, and that's all you needed to do here. All right, Rosa. So I hope that information helps. I hope that gives you some ideas about how to do these essays. Let's take a look now at the car sales. Let's see. I want to check your word count. I know you're at 150 words and higher. I just want to check. Oh, yeah, sure. You're at 201. Fine. All right. So the graph shows car sales during 2018 in 9 European countries for their distinct brands. What does "there" mean here? I don't understand that. For 3 distinct brands, Ford, Audi, and BMW. The country with the highest number of total sales was Hungary with almost 400,000 cars, followed by France with a total of 300,000 vehicles. Meanwhile, okay, put a full stop here, please. Meanwhile, Belgium had the smallest figure, uh, which was 80,000 cars, not transactions, cars, okay? In 2018. I like the way you did that. I think that was smart. You started with the highest, the 2 highest, and then you started with the lowest. That was a good thing to do. Ford sales had less market share in countries such as Germany and Italy, whilst Ford was the most popular brand of the 3 manufacturers in Belgium. Now, I kind of suspect that you mean this to be your overview, but it's not an overview. And the reason why it's not an overview is because you have all this data here. Okay. So remember what we said in the first essay correction we did. Talk about your introduction. Do your introduction first, and then do your overview. Your overview should have no data. So you could have clearly said that Hungary had the highest sales, while Belgium had the least, and overall BMW was the car that was the brand that sold the most cars. That's it. That's what your overview should look like. Okay? Because it just kind of highlights the main things, most important things. Okay. BMW cars were sold in every country, however, their quantity varies. Full stop. I don't like this between them. That's awkward. Meanwhile, France, Germany, and Ireland had a sales figure of 120,000 BMW car sales. That doesn't make sense. Car sales of car sales. That's weird. So had a sales figure of 120,000 BMW cars. Done. UK, Holland, Poland, and Italy sold between 60 and 80,000. In Belgium, the vehicle are, you know what? You can't just put a comma and think that you can throw all of this information into one sentence. Grammatically, it's not correct, and it's just awkward to read, okay? So here you put a semicolon, and I love it when students use semicolons, but here still, it's just not enough. You needed to break this up because essentially you're doing a disservice to yourself. You're not showing that you have grammatical range and the ability to create like full paragraphs here. Okay, so let's try it again. Meanwhile, France, Germany, and I put a comma here. France, comma, Germany, and Ireland had sales figures, no S, no A here, of 120,000 BMW cars. Period. Excuse me. Uh, in contrast, the UK, Holland, Poland, and Italy sold between 60 to 80,000 cars, period. The fewest BMWs were sold in Belgium at less than 5,000. That's how you do it. Although the brand which achieved the least number, okay, that's not a full sentence. When you use although, you need to have 2 sides of a sentence, 2 clauses. So, although BMW was very successful, Audi was the brand with the least number of sales. Okay, that's how you could have done it. You can see that I'm showing contrast here, 2 sides of a sentence that are opposite. The overall, get rid of this of, the overall Audi sales, no, nope, you can't use this expression like this. Let's see. The overall Audi sales, were the lowest within these countries. However, in France, Germany, Poland, and Hungary, they were similar to BMWs. No the. Comparing the amount of Audi sales, you don't need the apostrophe S. Comparing the amount of Audi sales to the sum of the other brands, it can be seen that in the UK, Holland, Italy, BMW, and Ford are preferred. Okay. So I am a little, I disagree with the way you organized this in a number of ways. I liked what you did here. Okay. I still think you could have done more. This whole thing about Ford did not belong in this paragraph. It belonged in the paragraph that talked about the brands. Okay. So the first problem I see is that you have no overview. With no overview, you cannot get a band 6 for task achievement. You're going to max out at band 5. Okay, that's the first problem. The other problem is that you did not mention all the countries by name, as far as I could tell. I thought you left some out. I'm not sure. Maybe you did mention them all. If you mention them all, that's fine. You need to, at least by name, okay? Without mentioning them, with leaving some out, you could potentially get a band 4. So keep careful with that. There are a couple ways to avoid this. When you say here 9 European countries, you can open a parenthesis. You can write the names of the 9 countries, close the parenthesis, and then move on. This is a surefire way to ensure that you have listed all the countries. All right, so now, then you needed to have an overview, which I told you what it should be. Then you can start with your details. I absolutely agreed with you that you should have talked about these overall numbers as you did: Hungary, France, and then Belgium. I would have also mentioned Italy, and then I would have kind of smushed the others together. I would have said that the remaining countries all sold between 200 and 260,000 cars. Okay, and then you're done. Then you can go to the individual car sales. Yeah, you didn't talk. Let me see what you did here with BMW. I don't know what you did. I didn't feel like this was particularly helpful for me, at least. I didn't really understand what was going. It wasn't particularly clear. So what I would do as far as BMW is concerned is I would say that, look at this. You see these numbers on the side? I would have said that in all countries, BMWs sold approximately 100,000 cars. The only exception to this was Belgium, where they sold roughly 5,000. Then you're done with BMW. Then you talk about Ford, and you talk about the most Fords were sold in Hungary and Holland at 140,000. The fewest Fords were sold in Italy at 10,000, and in Germany with roughly 10,000, and slightly more in Italy. The remaining countries sold between whatever that number is. Maybe it's like 60,000 and whatever, I guess, France is. Okay? So that's how you do this. And you can do the same thing for Audi. Okay, Rosa. So I hope this information is helpful. I hope it gives you some ideas about how to develop these, about how to write them correctly in a way that is organized, in a way that is coherent and cohesive. All right, so good luck with your next set. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm looking forward to it.